收看城市串吧，足不出户看天下，就在城市串吧，带您探索最新的城市热点活动，搜罗家国趣闻。这几年因为疫情的关系，大家都没办法出国旅行，但是终于开始恢复正常了，相信大家已经迫不及待想要计划出国了吧？但是这几年其实有个旅游行业一直都默默耕耘，那就是太空旅游。近年有许多亿万富翁都飞到太空边缘去体验，虽然这还不是我们普通人能够去体验的，所以呢，今天我就要介绍大家一个非常简易入手的好方法，那就是 Stargazer Exhibition， 让你能在温哥华都能轻松体验浩瀚宇宙。神秘的太空因为存在着太多未知，这一层神秘的面纱除了吸引不少电影用太空为背景，也吸引了 Canada 的创办人 Mccarthy 和艺术总监 Gabriel Perez， 利用宇宙做这次展览的主题，带来不一样的太空体验。
The first room is basically we call our introduction room to space, and so you'll see a timeline from the 1950s up until now about the space race and about how we got to the moon and where we're going to go beyond that. And then you'll see historical newspapers about the moon landing, and we have a spacesuit. It's all about the space race and how it impacts the Earth. And then we move into the Moon and Beyond room. That room, we have videos about the moon. In the immersive theater, which is 4,000 square feet, there's a 270-degree, 20-minute movie taking you at a shuttle launch up into space, through our galaxy, all the planets, and then out and beyond into deep space and the different galaxies that are close to us and beyond. And the final piece is a virtual reality 10-minute production on the International Space Station. You see the astronauts doing a spacewalk, you hear the communications, you feel like you're right there. You can look down and see the world, you can look up and see space, you can look around and you see the modules on the space station. It's absolutely fantastic, and we think the combination of everything here is unique. It's a first time, a world premiere. This has never been shown anywhere in the world before. We just developed it and produced it, and it's being launched here in Vancouver now.
刚刚提到的 VR 已经成为很多展览必备的元素，因为实在太像是身临其境了。尤其是在宇宙的话，感觉应该会在与众不同一点。所以太空和 VR 的结合，相信和其他展览的体验有不同的感觉。
We made a really strategic pivot to go to something like Stargazer, space, that families like, that kids like, that is much more entertaining, and something that once they come through here, they'll look up in the sky again and say, hey, I understand more about what's going on up there.
科学家很想拉近我们与宇宙的距离，即使太空离我们很远，日常生活却处处都托太空科技的福，就好像我们平日的通讯设备啊、预测天气等等，就很少人知道，其实连加拿大的农作业也有正面的影响。想一场太空旅游的滋味吗？现在机会来了，只要到 talentvisiontv.com 参与有奖问答游戏，说出 Stargazer Exhibition 里任意一个展览项目的名字，答对又被抽中的观众就可以赢得门票啦，非常简单，不要错过哦。我想无论是 Stargazer Exhibition 还是真的上外太空旅行，大家都应该会拍许多照来留念。现在科技发达，大家用拍摄这个方法来记录生活点滴已经是家常便饭了。相信大家的手机里有许多舍不得删掉的照片。如果你有这样子习惯的话，那相信 Capture Photography Festival 就非常适合你去逛逛。Capture 摄影节自2013年开始搜罗来自各地摄影师的作品，题材非常广泛。
I feel like the festival just really offers something for everybody. So there's historical, local, contemporary, national, international artists. So we have selected exhibition component, which is juried. So a bunch of galleries, commercial and institutional, like museums, participate and submit projects to us. And then we have featured exhibitions, which are a bit more substantive, often group exhibitions. And then we have public art projects across the Canada Line, some SkyTrain stations, and on the Dalgrauer, which is the facade of the BC Hydro building on Burrard Street. And then we also produce a catalog. So those are the main kind of components of the festival this year.
而在2年前疫情爆发之后，他们也坚持用不同的形式为民众继续呈现这个有意义的展览，利用了镜头的艺术，将温哥华与世界联系起来，让更多民众都可以以不同的形式参与。
We're today filming at the Pendulum Gallery, and it features the work of 8 contemporary lens-based artists looking at the idea of family through their practices. So they're investigating family structures, the way that you can use the camera as a tool to think about family relationships, discover more about your own family history. So we have still continued to produce several talks online, so you can find those all on our website. And then we're also creating some videos for people who just want to experience the art, but through at the comfort of their home. So there'll be a described tour of the exhibition. We're producing 2 videos on the Dalgrauer installation on Burrard Street. So one is a described tour and one is a Mandarin language tour. Then we also have in-person talk, because we just wanted to mix it up and make sure that for people who are really excited to get out and connect with people live and in person and see the work, that we're facilitating that, but then also to make sure that we're offering some opportunity for people to connect from home. The one great thing about Capture is that we have this really big, important public art component that people were especially appreciative of during the festival when we really couldn't be in enclosed gallery spaces. So that's been a real kind of saving grace of Capture.
疫情准备过去了，展览也终于可以回归实体。不过一些线上讲座等等的活动并没有因此消失。用网络来连接全世界，也是 Capture 在疫情期间发现的新大陆。
So in 2020, the world kind of shut down 2 weeks before the festival opened. So we had to really produce video and content very quickly. So that was the big challenge. We had to kind of transition all of our talks from in-person to being on Zoom. But it's also really given us an opportunity to connect with audiences outside of Vancouver, which has been amazing. So our Zoom talks have been attended by people who are in London, New York, Toronto, all of these centers outside of Vancouver that maybe we wouldn't have connected with if we hadn't been kind of forced into using these online meet formats.
摄影节的本身会持续到4月29号，虽然有些展览也即将闭幕，但也有部分展览与公共艺术会持续展出。有兴趣的朋友们就一定要到他们的官网去看看了，多多学习与吸收这些作品的精华，说不定明年就可以看到你的作品展出喽。看了这么多有意思的摄影作品，还是觉得有些照片年代越久越有味道。就像是经典作品《爱丽丝梦游仙境》是许多人的童年回忆，到现在都还有许多影视作品借鉴。最近在温哥华有个剧团将它这个经典作品和它的续集《爱丽丝镜中奇遇》重新改编，这个新旧的融合到底会擦出什么样新的火花呢？作为剧团在本年度的收官之作，当然有不少看头了。这部改编自路易斯·卡洛尔经典名作的新剧，充满了想象力和现代感。
First and foremost, we were looking for a way to come out of the pandemic. It was, I think, the first show that ATP had done in about 2 years. And they were looking for a way to invite everybody back to the audience. So they wanted a story that would appeal to a lot of people, including younger and older people. And they wanted to do something very theatrical, I think, to sort of reintroduce people to a theatrical way of telling the story. So this was one that really lends itself to a lot of different styles.
有3位演员扮演故事中的所有经典角色，所有的角色转换全部在观众们的眼前完成。要令观众留下深刻的印象，就要看看剧本和演员如何发挥自己的魅力。
My Alice is different from what we've seen in the movie and what we've read in the book, based on how I present her on stage. So the Alice that I'm portraying is a little bit older, so she's really in that teen adolescence where she's trying to navigate her way through adolescence and finding her way of becoming an adult. And so it's not just about her going on this crazy adventure and experiencing crazy things with different characters. It's about finding who she is as a young woman.
We do it a little more quickly, I think, than the original, and also it's set for the stage, so it's dialogue runs really quickly. There's a lot more physical humor. It's just sort of, it's a written story come to life. There's a framing device, so we sort of meet Lewis Carroll and the girls outside of the story, and then we sort of follow Alice into the story through her imagination. So it has sort of some framing elements, but I think people who know the story well will certainly recognize it. It's very true to the source material. A lot of your favorite characters are there. The tea party is still there. There's the original story, and then there's the very popular sort of Disney adaptation that I think a lot of people would have seen. This follows, I think we follow sort of the spirit of the original story, but all of our characterizations are our own. I sort of invented my own version of the rabbit, my own version of the hatter. They sound different. I move different. Obviously, I have this body, so I try and embody the characters as I am. So all of that creates sort of a new take on the characters.
改编经典著作本来就不是一件容易的事，不但要尊重原著里的人物性格、特点和剧情，也考验编剧将新旧融合的功力。
The theme of the play, which I think is sort of encountering a young girl growing up, really encountering adulthood and how strange that is, and encountering all of the aspects of growing up. And so I think the play is always dealing with that. And then there's our wish for the play, which is, again, like I said, that theater and a theatrical way of telling a story is a beautiful thing. So we don't try to pretend this is a film. We don't try to pretend this is TV. We're right with the audience. We can see the audience. We're affected by the audience. We sort of just built something that is very much only can be played inside a theater room with other people watching.
In Wonderland 在温哥华站已经完美落幕，想看的观众朋友们可能要再等等了。不过不要紧，相信在未来剧团会带来崭新的剧本回归，大家就拭目以待吧。哇，看完 In Wonderland 之后，真的感觉到了另外一个奇幻的世界。但是我们这个世界也有许多需要帮助的朋友们。由加拿大支行基金会主办的加拿大支行基金会夙愿筹款2022，诚邀大家一起帮助一班艾滋遗孤，同时也会为贫穷的学生们提供教育、医疗、心灵辅导等等。这个活动将会在5月14号星期六晚上6点半在幸运海鲜酒楼举行。夙愿将会在扣除开支之后全数用于支行基金会中国艾滋遗孤助学计划。欢迎大家致电778-996-0368或上 www.chengcanada.org 查询。好了，以上就是温哥华所有的节目内容，让我们休息一下，广告之后精彩继续。
大家好，我是主持人 Angela， 欢迎各位忠实的观众继续收看我们的城市串吧。明天就是复活节啦，不知道今年大家准备做些什么活动呢？如果不知道的话，就要留意我们这期的节目啦，有许多精彩好玩的等着你。由香港人气小生花旦组成的 TVB 明星队，在魅力凝聚新时代，将会用刺激好玩的游戏挑战加拿大新时代电视艺员队，并岳阳为粉丝送上无尽欢乐和惊喜。接下来，让我们看看香港明星队的曹永廉有什么跟觀眾分享。
Hello， 加拿大新時代電視嘅觀眾，你哋好，我係曹永廉。早排咧，我同阿肥媽咧就做咗個飲食節目啦。我諗喺加拿大嘅朋友都睇過㗎啦。咁啊，同阿肥媽做節目最好就係咩咧？有好嘢食啦，同埋可以食學煮好多嘢啦。咁今次跟阿肥媽亦都學識咗煮好多嘢，所以都幾大鑊㗎，個人都肥咗好多。最近我嘅工作咧就係都係拍電視劇啦。咁最近拍緊一部咧叫《波動》，咁啊拍咗都有一半㗎啦，不過最近因為香港嘅疫情關係啦，所以好多就停咗一段時間，停咗個幾月都冇拍。不過我仲有好多電視劇嘅存貨，大家到時要支持下。今次我準備咗啲咩咧？俾加拿大嘅 fans 咧，就係唱下歌啦，同埋玩下遊戲啦，仲有啲咩？到時你就知啦。Are you ready？ 大家準備好嘅話咧，我哋就要開 show 啦 ！Let's party！
相信许多人都去过魁北克，不知道大家有没有欣赏过魁北克艺术家的作品呢？多伦多有一家艺术馆专门展出各式来自魁北克艺术家的画作，让我们接下来去打卡他们最新的画展吧。
魁北克除了有迷人的风光之外，同时也出了许多现代浪漫派主义画家呢。有2位魁北克画家，他们周游世界各地，过着游牧人生的生活，把看到的景色融入他们的内心情感，刻画在画布上，用不同的艺术媒介打造出一种十分唯美的画风。
Right now we have this wonderful show called Timeless Cycles, which is featuring the works of Emily Desjardins and Sylvan Trombley. Together they decided they wanted to do this show because their works really are harmonious and symbiotic with each other. And as you look around the gallery, you'll see that both of them love to work with amazing amounts of texture, found items. It's more like wall sculpture than it is painting in its traditional sense.
不少画家侧重于描绘都市生活的人文风景，用充满浪漫主义的抽象画技法表达出与众不同的情感内涵。在这个展览里，我们能看到2位魁北克画家独特的抽象画风格呢。
So these two artists are both, they call themselves nomads because both of them spend most of their year traveling around the world. Sylvan Trombley right now is in Dubai, and he finds inspiration from his travels in Dubai, but he also spends time in New York City, in Montreal, and that's where you'll see things from Bushwick, New York. You'll find Dubai inspiration. And then there's Emily Desjardins, and luckily she gets to spend a lot of her time also traveling. She's right now on a boat in Mexico, which is incredible, and that is actually where she spent COVID.
旅行果然是启发创作和灵感的最好方式呢。从他们的作品中，我们能感受出一种浓厚的自由气息，看着内心就充满愉悦感呢。
What you're seeing in this show is the inspiration that comes from that travel, from the freedom to be able to move around the world and express themselves. And with Emily, it's very restful. It's all about nature. It's all about the sea. And for her, the sea and the movement of the wind and the birds and the ocean, for her, symbolizes freedom. And that's really what we're looking for.
这2位画家虽然身处不同的地方，但他们的画作一起展出，竟然有如此和谐的效果，让人赏心悦目。
Sylvan had a bit of a different perspective because he's more of an urban artist. So he saw it from the perspective of having to stay indoors. And he would look outside, and what would he see? He'd see the birds again. Both of them love the birds. And the bird really for him symbolizes freedom. So when you look around the show, the bird is omnipresent. It's kind of all about, how they were free when we were in lockdown. And you'll also see vegetation. You'll see the wonderful textures, and it's all about creativity.
2位画家结合独特的版画、油画以及各种创新材料，给我们带来一场别出生面的唯美画展，大家绝对不容错过呢。
想看古怪的东西，不一定要在万圣节才能看到呢。多伦多最近举办了一场以古怪为主题的特色节日，有形形色色你想不到的奇珍异宝等着你来探险，就看你胆子够不够大。
古董市场大家逛得多了，但真人骷髅头不知道你有没有在集市上看到过呢？下面这个集齐各种古怪恐怖元素的集市活动，可是让参观者们大开眼界，见识见识我们平常难以见到的奇珍异宝。这个1年1度的古怪狂欢节绝对让你不枉此行。
Years I've been a collector of oddities and unusual things. I've traveled around the world, and in my travels I'll meet all sorts of different amazing performers, everybody from bearded ladies to little people, circus performers, and I decided that I would bring them to Toronto once a year to showcase what I feel is the best of the best. And I've been doing it now for well over a decade, and it's so good to be back. Now that COVID is sort of coming to a bit of a close, we can have an event here today. We have all sorts of performers, and then for the first time, we have an Oddities Market.
这个古怪集市跟我们平常逛的旧货市场可是非常不同的。听说你在这里能找到凶案现场的物件，还有各种恐怖的物品，就看你胆子够不够大。
People can buy real human skulls. They're downstairs. You can buy fingers. You can buy weird things, animal bones, everything. Old magic kits and puppets and creepy things. All sorts of occult things, spooky things in the Oddities Market.
除了能在这个古怪物件集市里淘宝，这个狂欢节里还有让人瞠目结舌的各种现场表演，挑战你的视觉和想象极限。
The performances are crazy. I mean, some people, they're like, they can't even watch.
We have strongmen, we have pain-proof, we have mentalists, we have, oh my gosh, we have clowns, we have burlesque, we have all kinds of stuff. Lots of surprises, actually. So
we have a guy who can bend a horseshoe with his bare hands, another guy who can swallow a sword, people who put nails in their nose and eat glass.
这个搞怪的集市活动满足了大家对诡异事物的好奇心，实在是难得一见呢。想要来的观众可以关注下一届的活动哦，来尽情挑战你的胆量。
看 看完上期的古迹新貌，参观完19世纪英式古宅，相信大家都迫不及待看看这集我们要去哪些古迹探索。这期节目我们会带大家走进一个多伦多知名已故艺术家的故居，还有超棒美景可以欣赏。事不宜迟，让我们行动起来吧。
说起来自多伦多的有名画家，不少人都听过大名鼎鼎的 Doris Mccarthy， 他可是加拿大著名的风景画画家。Doris 除了以他独特的风景画出名之外，他生前居住以及创作的地方渔人天堂，也是在加拿大艺术界非常有名呢。让我们这期的古迹新貌带大家走进这座位于士嘉堡悬崖边的艺术天堂，感受 Doris 的创作世界吧。
We're in Fool's Paradise right now, which is the home of the celebrated Canadian landscape painter Doris Mccarthy. She lived to 100 years old. She had a very long life. She was a very prolific painter, again, mostly known for her large landscapes, although she did watercolors and other artwork as well. Yeah, she worked for a long time. She had over 5,000 works of art to her name at the end of her life and career, which is an incredible contribution. And she made this her home.
大名鼎鼎的画家 Doris 住在这个犹如世外桃源般的地方里，不知道她当初是怎么发现这片美丽的土地呢？
She came for a painting trip through the area in 1939, and before the house was here, this was actually farmland. She came here to do some painting along the bluffs, which you can see in the background here, some cliffs, a beautiful landscape. She was really inspired by this area. It's an area that she'd seen as a little girl. She'd come canoeing by here down in the water, and I think this is an area that really spoke to her. And she saw this place, she fell in love with it.
年轻的 Doris 与这片美丽的土地一见钟情，所以她动下了想买下这片土地的冲动。但当时的 Doris 还是一名普通的教师，买下这片土地的价格不菲。Doris 的母亲觉得这对于只有29岁的女儿来说实在是太奢侈了，所以才把这里叫做她的渔人天堂，因此这里才有了 Fool's Paradise 这个名字呢。
So yeah, when she came here, there were no buildings on the site, and she knew she wanted to have a cottage. So, we're just going into kind of wartime, the Second World War. Building materials were scarce, so she had to do a lot of that work on her own, although she did work with an architect-builder, Forrest Telfler. He helped design the building, and so they built this room in 1939, 1940, as well as a few of the other rooms kind of beside us. Property that wasn't winterized, she would come here for weekend trips to paint. Sometimes in the summer, she was a teacher, so she could get time off in the summer. But in 1946, there were electrical services brought out here. She electrified the cottage, she winterized it, put in insulation, those sorts of things, and started to live here full-time in 1947.
渔人天堂位于美丽的士嘉堡悬崖边上，远眺安大略湖，水天一色。屋子内所有的房间、装饰和用品都保留了 Doris 过去的风貌以及岁月的痕迹。她经常把她的家以及屋外的美丽风景作为她画中的主题。虽然 Doris 在2010年的时候去世，但是她把这片宝贵的土地留给了大家，让我们可以感受她的艺术世界。
Today, the house remains in use. Doris Mccarthy donated the property to the Ontario Heritage Trust in 1998-1999, and she continued to live in the house, though, until she passed away in 2010. And when she donated the house to the trust, she donated with the intent that the landscape would be preserved, but that the house would continue to be used by artists. And so we now run what's called the Doris Mccarthy Artisan Residence Center. So it's an application-based program that professional artists can come, and you can stay here from a time between 1 and 3 months, be inspired by the site, create art.
Doris Mccarthy 在士嘉堡的渔人天堂生活超过70年，她热爱大自然，对这片土地充满热情，创作了许多精彩的田园风景画作，给加拿大的艺术界留下了宝贵的遗产。这一切都离不开渔人天堂给她的灵感呢。
这期节目里的大蟒蛇实在太吓人，不知道电视机前的观众朋友，你想不想来亲身试试呢？多伦多实在有这么多小众的地方跟活动值得我们去探险。
对啊 Angela， 太多精彩的节目还有吸引人的内容，真的让人难以取舍，所以我已经安排好接下来的行程了。好啦，那节目的最后还是要谢谢大家今天的收看，那下周的城市串吧我们不见不散。